On the time. We're supposed to start on time, right? You all heard that? Start on time. Oh, I have my alarm going off where it says, it's starting on time. All right. Hare Krishna. So, welcome to our seminar on the key to, now that it's got to work. Okay, what's going on here? That works. This has gotten stuck. Hold on for a second. It was working just a second ago. Okay, I'm going to have to reset it. It was working. Let's start again. Okay. Hare Krishna. The key to continuous improvement in ISKCON. So when we talk about improvement, the word improvement, what do we mean? In our movement, we have a variety of words to talk about improvement. We might talk about progress. We might talk about getting better or having success. Srila Prabhupada, particularly, I thought an appropriate word that he used to use is the term to advance. And of course, he talked about movement. So a movement requires improvement. So, and he talked about the fact that Lord Chaitanya wanted to distribute this holy name in every city and town of the world. And in pursuance of his lotus feet, we are trying to advance this Krishna consciousness chanting movement. So improvement, advancement, betterment, success, achieving goals, that's what we mean here. That's what we're talking about. What are some keys? What are some elements that we need to have in place in order to achieve continuous improvement? Now, to improve, it's not enough to be on the right track. There's a famous statement from Will Rogers, a famous person in America. And he said, Hare Krishna. He said, even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. So improvement is not just knowing, having the right thing, right, being on the right path. It means movement. You have to be engaged. You have to be progressing. Of course, you can take this position. Well, what if we don't change at all and something magical just happens? So, that's another attitude towards how we can improve in ISKCON. We just say, well, the Lord will bless us. It'll be the mercy of Krishna and everything will be successful. He said, my name will be heard in every town and village. So let's just sit back and wait for it all to happen. So that's not Srila Prabhupada's mood. That was not his mood. So when we start talking about improvement, it's important to know what are we trying to improve. Trying to understand a little bit better in terms of the difference between inputs, activities, and outputs, and outcomes and impact. Oftentimes, we get these things a little mixed up. And we measure, and we're actually pretty good at measuring outputs. We're pretty good at measuring activities in some senses. What are some examples of outputs that we measure?
Book distribution.
Yeah.
Book distribution.
Book distribution. Now, someone would argue that, well, book distribution is actually in and of itself has an impact, right? Even if the person never opens the book. So that is one argument. But could we also say that if someone were to open the book, were to read it, that the impact of that output would be much more enhanced? What's another example? of an activity that has outputs, and we measure that, but we don't look at the outcome. Yes?
The Rath Yatras, festivals.
Rath Yatra festivals. We hold a Rath Yatra festival, and we measure, well, how many devotees took part. Perhaps we measure how many people saw it. And that is a kind of output. But if they were all looking at it and just looking at it and say, what are these crazy guys walking down the street, and what does this have any meaning to me? And they just happen to be like, there's a number of Rath Yatras that take place during big parades. So we get a little sometimes not so clear between outputs and outcomes. So when we talk about improvement, it's important to be able to understand this language of inputs, activities. What are we doing and why? So what? So what? We did all this, but so what? The so what, this is actually from a Christian organization. The so what is people's lives are changed. And from that outcome, there's an impact on the whole society. So, just a little discussion here. Does the idea of continuous improvement apply to ISKCON? Anyone offer something? Is what we're? I mean, is there any purpose to me doing this seminar here? ISKCON is a place for we don't just have to, do the same thing all the time, and just, right? I mean, why change anything? We need to improve?
Or we stagnate.
Or we stagnate. We die. That's pretty bad. Yes?
Irrelevant.
Become irrelevant. What are some reasons why we should to seek continuous improvement? And what are some ways to achieve it? So I think you feel it's important. What are some ways that you consider are important to achieve continuous improvement in ISKCON? Yes?
More educational initiatives to educate.
Education. What are some ways to achieve continuous improvement? What are you doing in your own yatras, projects, to get continuous improvement? Yes?
Integrate technology with our activities.
Integrate technology.
Yes.
Use technology. Okay? How?
Means new technologies are coming, so we have to be update with those and then engage in our service.
To enhance your productivity?
Yes.
Okay. Anything? Yes?
Train devotees on a proper way.
Train devotees how to work in a proper way. Yes?
Improve relationships among devotees.
Improve relationships amongst devotees. Yes?
Identify the dynamic needs, concerns, and
Identify needs, concerns,
interests of the people.
and to address those
We should cater to Krishna consciousness.
in a particular audience. Needs, concerns, and interests. Great. I think we pointed out that we sometimes look at output and not impact, right? We talked about that. So, what are some obstacles to continuous improvement in ISKCON? Bureaucracy. I'm going to show you a few first, and then you'll add to these, but that's great. Would you agree that crisis management, when we have to, there's no time to improve because we've got to deal with something that's just right in front of us, and you're putting out a fire. It was mentioned here that this morning about strategic planning, and strategic planning is tied to what we're going to be presenting here. But it was mentioned that sometimes strategic planning is not possible because you're putting out a fire. How about this? Resistance to change. Do you think that's a factor?
Yes.
We resist the changes that might be needed in order to achieve the improvement that we're looking for. That could be cultural. I won't work here. It might be personal. What's in it for me? Or intellectual. I don't get it. Or it could be, I don't know, thanks, we're too busy. Imagine yourself in that situation. Here's another one that I think it was mentioned this morning. The term. Anybody pick up on the term silo? It was mentioned this morning. So I think it was Gopal Bhatta. Someone mentioned silo. Everyone know what a silo is? Okay, it's very
They keep the corn.
the corn. Yeah, how do you know what a silo is? Okay, it's a very there's silos in France too. American farmland is dotted with silos. They're big, huge things which pop up over the countryside, and they're used to store grain, generally corn or wheat or hay, or various things can be put in silos. The silo mentality is saying that, well, you know, just leave us. I've got my little space, and that's my place to work, and I'm going to work there, right? I'm happy, you know, until something's going on. Oh, wait a minute, where's the fine? I need some help. But I'm here in my little silo. This is an interesting kind. No, free range won't work. They're happier in separate pens where they can blame each other when things go wrong. Silo mentality. Just, okay, I'm in my little place here. It's better that way. I'm free. I don't have to worry about you over there. You know, I'm in control too. Right? That's another thing. I don't have to, you know, deal with anybody else. So, you mentioned already, what are some other obstacles? You mentioned bureaucracy. Okay, bureaucracy. But we need bureaucracy too, don't we?
Yeah, but you know, it can be
extreme bureaucracy. Yes, Atul.
Ideology.
Ideology can stand in the way. How to give us an example?
Well, we have a value of traditionalism in our ideology.
Tradition, meaning that could resist changing and taking on new things. Yeah. How about competitiveness? We have a competition amongst, so we don't, you know, we want to share. We don't want to share what we found out, because then, you know, you'll do it and then you'll beat us in this marathon or whatever. So competition. How about that individual striving, we're going to repeat this quote later on about individual thoughtfulness and competence. That could also be an obstacle. So this seminar is oriented towards addressing some of the issues that were mentioned this morning. People remember that. Let's just very quickly, briefly look again. Get my glasses here somewhere. Where are they? That we were told, we were introduced that this particular ILS, we're particularly looking towards what? What will help guide what? The future. Okay? What are the fundamental principles that we need as a bedrock? What will govern and protect and guide our society as it continues to grow? How can we meld traditional values? You mentioned traditional values and sacred concepts with the need to remain relevant. New leaders are going to come from various walks of life. How can we synthesize that our society is a temple-based, I've skipped over to the last one, temple-based model, but it needs to move that. It's moved already to congregation. How will future members become firmly grounded and able to inspire others? So I'm hoping that the things that we're going to talk about here are going to help you in how you can address these and answer these questions. So what I'm going to present here is drawn and based on a principle. We talked about the first, what are some of the bedrock foundational principles? So I'm going to suggest that this one, from the Nectar of Devotion, is a principle, a foundational principle for ISKCON. Anything that can be utilized in advancing, remember we use that term advancing, to mean continuous improvement in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, should be accepted. So what I'm going to present here is not from Shastras. This is not from the traditional values. This is not from, although he quotes Bhagavad Gita in here. But this isn't Rupa Goswami, okay? This is a secular guy. I don't know, what his lifestyle is like. He's a professor at MIT. He came out with this book now almost 30 years ago. It's become very popular. It's now revised and updated, more than 1 million copies in print. He called it the fifth discipline, the art and practice of the learning organization. So the premise of this whole seminar today is that the key to continuous improvement in ISKCON is to become a learning organization. So that's what we're going to talk about. How can we become, both in our individual projects, in our individual centers, and as a society, how can we become a learning organization? So, what do we mean by a learning organization? A learning organization is where people continually expand their capacity to create the results they truly desire. Where new patterns of thinking are nurtured. New patterns of thinking. New patterns of thinking. That's one of the obstacles. We resist new patterns of thinking. Where collective aspiration is set free. Where people are continually learning to see the whole. Not just all their little silo, their little part, their place in the whole structure, but the whole, together. And to sum it up, it is people working together at their best. Peter Senge, the author of this book. Now, I have to give you just a little caveat here. I'm not an expert in what I'm presenting. I'm also a student, like you. I'm learning this. I haven't, dived deeply into all this material. I've spent some days working with it in preparation for this seminar. But don't look at me and say, well, here he is now, the professor of, learning organizations. No, we're here doing what he wants, he's suggesting we do. We're going to learn some things together, okay? Prabhupada also talked about working together. Many times, I said here, Srila Prabhupada, many references, I want that you all work together cooperatively. So working together, but how do we want to work together at our best? At our best. Now, just to get started, let's take a look at the difference between a traditional and a learning organization. A traditional organization is command down, reporting up. A learning organization means where the leaders, their job is to set vision, to define issues, to receive the solutions from the team. So, what is your experience? Looking at this, maybe we already are a learning. Are we already a learning organization? Or do we suffer from some of those traditional models? What do you say? What's your experience?
We are in between.
In between. In between. We have some elements, and then we all have some other traditional, and that's not bad, because they both have their place. So we're going to focus on the learning organization elements. What are some issues that you see related? You mentioned one, bureaucracy, too much relation on bureaucracy and some relationship issues. Some other things that you see that are elements or issues related to our organizational culture.
Individual initiatives are not encouraged.
Individual initiatives not being encouraged, okay?
Even thinking.
Even individual thinking not being encouraged, all right? Yeah?
Friends politic.
Excuse me?
Friends politic.
Friends politic.
Yes.
Oh, okay. If you're my friend, then you get to this service, you get this, I'll listen to you because you're my friend, but you over there, you're not my friend, so I don't care what you have to say. Yeah?
I'm the president, I'm the GBC, so
I'm in charge. It's my way or the highway.
Yes.
or the good like it.
What's that?
The good like it. Good like it.
Gulag? Whew. Hare Krishna. That's pretty intense. All right. So let's see if we can help to address these through the 5 disciplines of a learning organization. Now, this slide is a little bit difficult to see perhaps. So I'm going to read it out to you. The 5 disciplines, although systems thinking is actually the 5th discipline, so it's put it on the top. But we'll start with shared vision, where everyone owns the vision. And we have these, by the way, on a handout. Let's hand out this. You can hand these out. They're not in the right order, stapled, so that particular part is at the end. Everyone owns a vision and has focus and energy for learning. Then it goes to mental models, being able to exchange unwanted values for new and applicable values. We're talking now again about disciplines, things that we practice to do. We train ourselves, we practice to apply these disciplines in the way we work together. Team learning, where individuals share what they've learned so the team becomes more knowledgeable. Individual commitment to the process of learning or personal mastery. Now, as I said, systems thinking is at the top. And Srila Prabhupada also liked systems. In fact, his first purpose for ISKCON begins to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large and to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and to achieve real unity and peace in the world. So these disciplines come together to enable us to be a learning organization. The first is the shared vision. Few, if any, forces in human affairs are as powerful as shared vision. Now let's see if this works. This is a little clip. And now I'll see if I can get it to...
As you really work on bringing people together around things they really care about, you're going to start to encounter some of the core dynamics of building shared visions. This term, shared vision, is often really misunderstood. In fact, what often happens in organizations all the time, maybe you've lived through this, someone up here says, hey, let me tell you about what our vision is. And just because they say it, it becomes the shared vision, which of course isn't true at all. It's one person's vision.
Oh, it's not playing. Uh-oh. You're hearing it, but it's not playing. Okay, what's going on here? Oh, Krishna. All right. Let's see if I start this from the current slide.
This can be played separate video.
No. Okay. I'm going to skip the video and I'm going to tell you about it, okay? Because I couldn't test that. Basically what Peter is talking about. Now this is not even showing here. Okay, let's see.
Who's speaking?
Peter Sanga, the author of this book. Okay? Let's see if I can get this to start up again. Now it's really messed up. Okay.
He's trying.
Okay, hold on. No, don't do that. No, that you should not have done. Anyway. Now we're going to be waiting for it to come back up. Okay. Well, I will, hopefully this will come back up very soon. But let me just talk about it. There's a few really important things to understand about shared vision. Shared vision doesn't mean that you and you and you and me and we all can read and we've memorized the words on a document that says vision for our project, okay? That the leader wrote. So the leader of the project writes out, here is the vision for our project. Now you all take this vision. And you ask them, what's the vision of the project? And he says, what's the vision of the project? That's not shared vision, okay? Shared vision is when your vision, your personal vision, my personal vision, the place where those come together, that's where we share vision. We have shared vision. When your vision, my personal vision, and your personal vision, they come together, that's where we have shared vision. Now that shared vision, when it comes together, it still doesn't look the same to all of us. We couldn't see properly Peter's video, but he talks about the example of a hologram. How many people here have seen a hologram? Okay, so you've seen it's a three-dimensional projection, right? You can walk around it, it's really cool. But now, a hologram is actually projected on a two-dimensional surface. And a unique property of a hologram is its divisible properties. That means that this is the image. Say you take a big projected surface like this. If you divide it in half, you'll get the same image twice, but from a little different angle. And you divide it into little pieces, you still get the same vision. So you get the same picture, but from a different angle. Another example that he uses is like a window with a screen in front. If you take a window screen and you put a window shade in front of it, pull it down, and you cut a hole over here. When you look through that hole, you'll see what's on the other side, but from that angle. If somebody cuts a hole down here, you'll still see what's on the other side, but now it's from another angle. So shared vision means there's a vision out there, but it's perceived by each member of the team, of the organization, a little differently because of their personal vision. So when we are able to achieve shared vision, this becomes an extremely powerful discipline to become a learning organization. The next discipline is called personal mastery, and it means that it's a principle that organizations learn only through individuals who learn. An organization can't learn on its own, it learns by the people that formed that organization by their learning. It learns through those people who feel they're always learning. They never feel like, now I'm on the top, you know, I don't need to learn anything. That's recipe for stagnation, and they always strive to clarify and deepen their personal vision. Now, personal mastery has some interesting elements to it. It especially involves being deeply aware of the growth areas and the tension between vision and reality. This is called creative tension. How many here have heard of that term, creative tension? Creative tension is like this. The gap between vision and current reality. It's a source of energy. It's like this. Constantly clarifying what's important for me, my personal vision. Always reflecting on that. What's important for me and my personal vision, and constantly learning to see what's the current reality. Where am I right now? Very clearly. And what does that produce? It produces creative tension. It's like a rubber band in two hands, stretching. Right? That band needs resolution. You can't just hold it. It's going to pull you either this way or that way. It also can take place internally when you have what's called the belief in your powerlessness or unworthiness to do anything about something. You have a vision, but I can't do that, and it just pulls you back. But that vision is, I want it, and you start moving in that direction. So managing this, seeing it, understanding that this is going on can give you energy, motivation, and mastery. It can propel you towards personal mastery. This is another video, but I'm going to skip it because that wasn't working the first time. It talks about the 4 C's of personal mastery, beginning with connection, being able to connect with yourself, your purpose, your self-awareness, and connect with others, being able to see your vision, being committed, having a clear intent. What would we hear this morning? Disciple. To be the disciple. What it means, it's the level of commitment that's involved. That's what personal mastery is about. Having courage to accept, to acting despite fears, and to talk about and take appropriate risks, and to be vulnerable, but at the same time to be compassionate for yourself, for others, to have empathy, but also to set boundaries. So these 4 C's, hopefully we'll get the video work. I'll send it to you as a link. You can see it. Another element to be concerned about when we talk about personal mastery is what's called a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Fixed mindset means, I believe the intelligence, personality is inherent and static, it's locked down, it's fixed, it doesn't change, so I avoid failure, I avoid challenges, I stick to what I know, I don't take feedback, criticism, that's like a personal affront, and I don't change. But a growth mindset is where you think, I can develop, and I want to learn. I can confront uncertainty. I embrace challenges. I put effort into learning. I'm not afraid to fail. And I take feedback. The third discipline, and I have to move a little quick. There's a lot of material here. So hopefully we'll get some time at the end for some questions. Mental models. These are the deeply held internal images of how the world works. We'll get into what that means. Here, for example, is what's called the ladder of inference. This is a way in which mental models work. It starts where you have some actual observations, things that are, like a videotape was done, and you could, this is just what happened, okay? But what happens is we use our mental models to select data And we just focus on that. Like here, this is somebody who missed a deadline. And so we look at, oh, she did this before, she's failing to talk to me. Then we put meaning on top of it. Oh, she's really not actually ill. We make some assumptions based on our ideologies or our meanings. We draw some conclusions, we take some beliefs, and we actually take action on all of this. And that all feeds back to the data that we select the next time. So this is the ladder of inference that is like one of the ways that mental models affect the way we learn and do things. And we have to be able to see it. We have to be able to see it. This is my mental model at work here. And maybe it's something that needs to be fixed because it's causing something in the system not to work properly. The fourth is team learning. Team learning starts with dialogue. Okay, now dialogue is different from discussion. In a discussion, often the principle is, I'm going to tell you what I think, and I'm going to convince you that I'm right. And okay, and maybe I'll hear you, but the goal is, I win. Or your goal is, you win. Dialogue is different. Dialogue is where you suspend all of that, I'm right, you're right, and you just enter into a genuine thinking together. So there's a discipline to this. There's a discipline to dialogue and to learning together. It allows a group to discover insights that couldn't be discovered just on your own. And it shows how to recognize the patterns that undermine learning. So this is the discipline of learning as a team learning. I would say this ILS is a good example of an attempt for team learning. And finally, we have, here's just another one, about divergent thinking. That means suspending assumptions, treating members equally, exploring assumptions. That creates dialogue. But our defensive routines, our feeling threatened, our hiding our ignorance, they're all blocks, and they lead to this type of convergent discussion where it's, who argues the best? And that leads to, and it's often needed when you have decision-making involved. Finally, the fifth discipline is systems thinking. Traditional thinking is very linear. Okay, this happened and then that has the cause. It's a linear sort of way of looking at the world. Whereas a systems thinking approach is to see interconnection between many, many different things at play. The practices, and we have a handout there, a whole sheet for you to read about systems thinking, is to start by thinking of the big picture, observe both short-term and long-term consequences, recognize dynamic, complex, interdependent nature of systems, take into account both seen and unseen consequences, and remember that we are all part of the systems in which we function. We are part of those systems that we are in. And that we each influence those systems even as we are being influenced by them. Tools of a systems thinker. And the discipline of systems thinking is not something that we have generally. Most of the time we're thinking linearly. And we don't use these tools. We observe things with disconnection rather than interconnected. We observe in linear rather than circular. We observe things in silos, not emergence of ideas. We look at parts and not the wholes. We look at analysis of things and not synthesizing. We look at things in isolation and not in relationships. So these are some of the tools of a systems thinker, to look at all these synthesis and wholes and relationships. I think as devotees, we do use systems thinking when we try to find our place in Krishna consciousness with Krishna, because we begin to try to see the whole world in relationship to Krishna. So we have to apply that same discipline within our projects and organizations. This example of the iceberg is often used to demonstrate what is systems thinking. Generally, we observe some events which are like the tip of an iceberg. But we don't go down to the root. We don't go down to the mental models, the assumptions that we have that keep this whole thing in place. We don't look at the underlying structures or the patterns and trends. By looking at the mental models, we can transform the structures, and we can transform ourselves, and we can design appropriate structures, anticipate the trends, and create events that we really want, to get the results that we really want. This is what a learning organization is, to work together at our best, to achieve those results which we do personally feel we really want. In a systems thinking approach, we generally try to use what is called double loop learning instead of single loop. Single loop means, okay, we did this, we had this strategy, we had this technique, we got this result, okay, it wasn't exactly what we wanted, so we go back here, we adjust our strategy, our technique, and in that way we get a different result. But double loop is to go back, not just to fix this thing here, but to go back to see what are the assumptions behind our strategies. Why did we do it that way? And question that. It means thinking about the way that things feed back. There are things that balance, they self-correct. For example, there's a thermostat, right? And to control the heat in a room. And as you set the temperature, then there's a bit of a gap, but then that generates the heat and it balances out for us. But then you have what are called reinforcing loops, which lead to instability or exponential growth. For example, population. Births per year expands the population, which makes more births per year, which makes more population. It's like a snowball coming down. So these systems, when these systems are in place, you can take down the factory, but if the system behind it, then that'll produce another factory. If a revolution destroys a government, but the systematic patterns of thought, then those patterns will repeat themselves. So looking at systems is very, very important for continuous improvement. Now, one other way to look at systems is to understand the system archetypes that are generally found in so many different situations. And one of the documents that I handed out here is an explanation of system archetypes. And I'm not going to get into that at length, but they're called fixes that fail, shifting the burden, limits to success, eroding goals, growth and underinvestment, success to the successful, escalation and tragedy of the commons. We'll look at one of them, shifting the burden, and see how this works as a system. Shifting the burden, a problem symptom is addressed by a short-term and a fundamental solution. So there's two ways to address the problem. There's a short-term way to address and a fundamental way. But the short-term solution produces side effects that affect the fundamental solution. So as this occurs, the system's attention shifts to the short-term solution or to the side effects and takes it away from what? The fundamental solution. Okay? Like this. So you have a balancing system here and a balancing system here, but you have this reinforcing system, the side effect that makes the fundamental solution negative and makes the symptomatic solution increasingly taking the burden. Like here is example, I can't pay my bills, so I use credit cards, but that increases my debt burden, which means my ability to reduce my spending to match income is affected. I can't solve things. I did this little thing with care for devotees. Okay, care for devotees, as you increase the care for devotees, you get happier devotees. But caring for devotees means you're spending more money, which means more stress on the managers, which means there's less care for devotees. So you see how this system doesn't come into, it keeps going back and forth between happier devotees and Stressed managers. So there's something going on here. There's a mental model that's at stake here that maybe needs to be addressed. Why is money being spent stressing out the manager? Some mental models are placed there. So by looking at these systems and identifying where things are going on, we can try to address and improve. So again, the core learning capabilities of organizations. Aspiration, that's the personal mastery, the shared vision. Understanding complexity, the systems thinking. Reflective conversation, mental models, and team learning. These support, these 5 disciplines presented like this as 3 core elements support a learning organization. How do we achieve this? There's a system also at work here. The system divides that we have what we call the domain of change. This is where we change our attitudes, our skills, our capabilities, and where we act, what we do. And there's an effect between them. I won't get too much into this because we're running out of time. What are some examples in ISKCON of how we're doing or have achieved learning organization characteristics? I thought I would present Srila Prabhupada's famous quote on organization and management in light of what we mean by a learning organization. So probably all of you know that you quoted it already, right? That Srila Prabhupada said, the Krishna consciousness movement is for training men and women to be independently thoughtful and competent in all types of departments of knowledge and action. So, training, so there's learning involved, right? There's personal mastery. This is personal mastery in a nutshell. The spirit of enthusiastic service, which is individual, spontaneous, and voluntary. So this is vision, this is shared vision. This is where your personal vision gets combined together with others to create shared vision. The atmosphere of fresh challenge, creative tension. So Srila Prabhupada understood these principles. He wrote to me once about team learning. I sent him a letter about a project where we were getting accredited courses, and he said, distribute this information to all the centers. So he did understand this principle. Time and time again, he would have people get trained and then go someplace else to train others. He understood the principle of team learning. He understood the principle of personal mastery. He understood the principle so deeply of shared vision. Like you said, he would encourage personal vision. He would encourage people to express their person, but it was all centered around the same thing, spreading Krishna consciousness. And I believe he understood systems very, very well, very deeply. He was expert. So to do this, if we want to apply these principles in ISKCON, we need guiding ideas, we need theory, tools, methods, and we need innovations in infrastructure. We need to have our ideas, our guiding ideas in our organizations. We have to have those basic ideas in place that would say, we want continuous improvement. We want to be a learning organization. We want to be a place where people are the most important and valued asset over everything. So we also do need infrastructure. We need knowledge management. We need to be able to access the insights, information, practice, technology, people, processes, and advice that exists throughout our society. But we don't do that very well. Once a year we come together here and we're doing a lot of it. But the rest of the year, perhaps we don't do that much. We need to do a lot more in the way of managing and sharing knowledge. And one of the ways is to develop what's called a community of practice. A community of practice means when people, they come together around a common theme or purpose, some joint enterprise whereby they build trust amongst themselves, which then enables them to share their tacit knowledge, means the knowledge that they have, right there to share, which helps them develop shared practices, which then creates a sort of collective intelligence, which then becomes implicitly held knowledge, means knowledge that the members of the community have held implicitly in themselves. And that again grows the community of practice. So we need to do that kind of thing. And one of the ways we're trying to do that is ISKCON Online. ISKCON Online is that kind of learning community that we're trying to establish, where we can create, collect, store, distribute, know what and know how in the field of the internet and online technologies, and develop a community who share similar concerns and problems, interact regularly to share their experience and knowledge. Damodar Dhananjaya Prabhu is and he will be, at the end of this, he'll be collecting everyone's name and email address or telephone number. Please give it to him so that we can bring you into our learning community, if you like. And then we learn from each other. Another way that's just coming up now, it's been in the process, is a knowledge portal called ISKCONKX.com that has a place where you can find about all the different courses going on in ISKCON. There'll be a knowledge exchange, and there'll be an ISKCON GPS, which is, how do you find your way through different things. It's just getting launched. Gaurapurnima Prabhu is behind all of this, and their organization is the Bhaktivedanta Vidyapit at Govardhan Eco Village. So, just to final thing, some common strategies that are used in learning organizations that are important for you to know about. One of them, to achieve continuous improvement, is this. It's called PDCA. Plan. Make a plan. And I highly encourage you, maybe the next thing you do is you go to that booth out there and you book your time with a strategic planning group to get one-on-one to help you in your planning. But then just get a plan, do it, and check the results, and then act and improve, okay? Not that you have to get it all figured out before you get anywhere. Fail fast, fail often, but always fail forward. This is the principle behind much of what's called agile software development. Get it done. Okay, that didn't work, but you observe, how did it not work? You take note. How did this fail? Why didn't it work? Then try again. Iteration. And always moving forward to continuous improvement. And steal ideas. Good ideas, just take them. Don't ask even. Of course, if it's copyrighted, patented, and so on, you might get in trouble. But anyway, try to, somebody who's doing something good, just take that and apply it to what you can do. So going forward, let's see how we can, in our various organizations and efforts, create a shared vision, develop and encourage personal mastery within ourselves and within our teams, become aware of our mental models that are being at place, promote team learning amongst ourselves, and start to begin to use that kind of systems thinking. It will start to come, I'll tell you that. I've just been, reviewing this, and anyway, you'll see it at place if you come to my other seminar on pathways. You'll see there I present a whole bunch of different kind of systems that apply to outreach. So I encourage you to come. Let's clarify the guiding ideas in your organization. Try to create your own knowledge management systems. We're there to help you with that. And develop and participate in communities of practice. Hare Krishna. I have 5 minutes. So I'm sorry that I didn't give as much time as I would like, but there's a lot of material here. And we did have a few glitches that probably would have put us over time anyway. So I'm thankful for that. Any questions? We have some time.
Have you given these lectures more lengthy way?
Excuse me?
Have you given these lectures in a more lengthy way so we can watch them offline, videos or something?
Not yet. Not yet. This is my first presentation on this. So, yes. So you're my guinea pigs, I'm afraid.
Well, it seems like in ISKCON, one of the obstacles is really this hierarchy, bureaucracy. I'm the top, I'm the president. I can assert too much, It's just like, I got the final word. So how to get out of that, And talk with your leaders. We don't talk. They come in and then go on and do this. There's no communication between the top and the bottom.
Well, I suggest that each one of you, if you think that that's not the way to do it, then please do it a different way, in your own projects, and show the example, and hopefully the people will see. That's, because ultimately, unless you're a, fire department or an army general or, someplace where you need that kind of management. There are situations where you need to have a boss who's just the boss. So, hopefully, those are the situations where that will happen, and others will be different. So, any other questions? Please give your contact information so that we can keep you in touch. Please also take a copy of our chatnow.com project. You can distribute those, where we're trying to apply some of these principles in our outreach efforts, internet outreach efforts. Hare Krishna. Thank you very, very much. Please encourage others that you think might benefit from this seminar to please come, and let's see what happens. Okay? Thank you very, very much. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada. And as I said, this afternoon I'm doing pathways, different strategies for moving people forward from zero to Shraddha. Hare Krishna.